turn us on and bring us up. Are we on recording now?
I believe it starts automatically.
It shows recording up there, the little red.
Okay, then you've also got the audio one going.
All set.
All right, let's call a meeting back to order. This is the Budget Committee for Tillamook County. Friday, or Thursday, I should say, April 13. We're now down to the EDC, Economic Development Center, but I had mentioned before our break that we might shift the clerk up, but it turns out the people are up. EDC folks are here, and it's their time. I wonder, though, if still we might be able to move the clerk up before lunch, depending on how long the district attorney takes. So that's still a possibility. You ready to go at a moment's notice, Tassie?
Yes, sir,
Okay, good, thank you.
as always.
As always. Indeed, you are ready. Okay, well, let's do EDC then, and we'll turn it over to Ms. Cooper, and she can identify herself and colleagues and others, and we'll go from there. So go ahead.
My name is Terry Cooper. I am the Director of the Economic Development Council for Tillamook County.
Maria Carrillo, Project Coordinator for EDC.
Good to be here today. Thank you. I think this is my fifth one. Fifth budget hearing. So I think hopefully I did a little better job on getting a bigger print in your packets than previous years, because when you put the information in there, it makes it really tiny. So I added it on that blank page. So as is no secret, we have spent a lot of time last year on the aforementioned business license thing that did not pass. So I kind of, in your packets, I kind of did an overview of everything that we've been working on. I wanted to highlight, just a couple of the projects. So we're working on an ESL project with the Creamery, where we're starting off with the community college, TBCC, and the EDC and the Creamery to get some ESL training for existing employees. And possibly then we're trying to figure out how to roll that out into the farms themselves to get some classes for people that work on the farms. Not quite sure how we're going to do that yet. So that's kind of an interesting project. We are currently in almost to the end of our first Economic Development Fund training program. I took some existing EDA funding that we had and requested to use it to develop kind of an IDA type work plan where...
Terry, you're talking in EDC lingo, so you
Oh,
said
sorry.
EDA and IDA and
Sorry,
things.
EDA is...
ESL,
And
for those who
ESL.
may not know.
That's right.
ESL is English as second language.
Thank you.
EDA is the Economic Development Administration. And so IDA is an individual development account. So what we did was we repurposed that money, and for businesses that are going through the SBM training with the SBDC, which is 10 months long. The SBDC is the Small Business Development Center.
And SBM.
SBM is Small Business Management. Sorry, we have our own language, I guess. I
That's
never really. And also go through the business planning class. So if they go through that 10-month class and the business planning class, and whatever they say during that 10-month period, up to $1,000, we match it 2-to-1. So when they get finished with the classes and have their business plan, then they have $3,000 to start their business. So this is our first time. That was developed, and we started it off. We had, we kind of grew it. So this is our first time. We're hoping to get funding to make that a reoccurring thing, because we hope it's been pretty successful. And it's kind of a pilot project, if you will. Ryan Weber from Umpqua Bank is managing the funds. So the people make deposits every month into an account. They can put money in, but they can't take money out. And then at the end of the time, we'll close them out and we'll match the funds. So he's been talking it up around the banking world, and so everybody's thinking it's kind of exciting. So we're pretty pleased with that project.
That is great. Hey, can I ask you to go back to the English as a second language program you're working on with the Creamery? what's the intention of it? How do you see it playing out? I think that's very interesting and innovative, and to my knowledge, we haven't done anything like that before.
So the original purpose was because I was working with Mike Bever from the Creamery, that the communications between the workers and the farm owners were sometimes quite hard, quite difficult. And so that was how we got started. And then we realized that it was going to be difficult to train on site on the farms, and how we were going to work that out. So working with TCA said, well, they had existing employees that had the same, that work at the actual creamery that had the problem, so why not start there? So we're kind of doing it as a pilot project to kind of work out the kinks. So we found a curriculum that had been used by the Northwest Manufacturers Association, and taking that curriculum, and TBC is kind of molding it and shaping it to fit into the dairy industry with their own words and wording and things that need to be changed, their own lingo, just like EDC has their own lingo. And then we're going to roll that out. So the purpose is to improve the communication skills so employees could move up, or just communicate better with their managers and stuff like that. So it's kind of a build, career building type thing. And we're hoping to move it out to the farms, but we haven't quite mastered how we're going to hold those classes. Whether we would have the farm workers come to the creamery, or because it would be hard to do them on site. It'd be also hard. We thought about doing it online digitally, but that didn't work out either. So it's kind of a work in progress.
I think that's great. And are we also still working on translating employment materials into Spanish for local businesses?
Right. Maria does the translating, and she just did the flyers for the bike rodeo for the Tillamook County Health, Community Health? Wellness. So yes, when people need translation, they send it to us. We've done some work for the ports and that kind of thing, for things that need to be posted in both English and Spanish.
That's great. Thank you.
So, and our website, Marina translated our entire website into Spanish, so we have it in both English and Spanish. And we're trying to send our notices and stuff like that out in both languages
That's great. Thank you.
to be more inclusive. So, and then I guess, unless you have any questions, I really like to spend most of my time talking about what we're planning for this next year. And I included a work plan in there, kind of made it large so it was easier for you to look at and read. When I first printed it, it was really tiny writing. So I think the announcement is in here. I think most of you probably already know that we recently received a grant from the Ford Family Foundation to support entrepreneurship in Tillamook County. So that's the first thing here on our list. So what it is connecting entrepreneurs with resources. So we're going to spend one of the first key things that we're going to be doing is kind of a mapping project, figuring out all the resources that exist already. And then as we work with entrepreneurs, kind of trying to develop those missing pieces that they really need, that we may not know what they are now, but hopefully, as we go through this process, we'll learn what they are. So it has some kind of fun things in it too. We have 2 pitch contests included in there, where one is for high school students, and we will be going into the high schools and like for a 6-week period and working with the students to develop their business plan and their pitch, which I think is going to be fun. And then one for adults, where we have like a Shark Tank type thing, where we're calling it a dolphin tank because we don't want to be as sharp, as rough as they are on the people. But where they come and we have prizes built into where they, earn. It's a sliding scale for like the top 3. So the entrepreneurship encouragement has to include K through 12 all the way through adults. So we have to cover that whole sphere. So we're working on what the high school's counselors call baby shark tank, but we call it dolphin tank. And then we're also working on the idea of having a career fair. So we would have all kinds of, including entrepreneurship, we would have all kinds of businesses come and work with maybe middle school to high school students for a career fair for all 3 school districts. So that's all within that project. So it's a pretty big project. And we're pretty excited about it because when you think about economic development as what we do in the world, typically traditionally for years and years, we did what we called business marketing and attraction, which was trying to bring new businesses to the area. We did business retention and expansion, which was working with our already existing businesses and helping them to grow and expand. So this is kind of adding that third piece on there. I've seen it as a stool with 3 legs. This is our third leg of working with people that are considering starting a business or have just recently started a business to help them scale up. So we, eventually, hopefully the idea being that they scale up and they hire people and, it increases the economy that way. So it's kind of a new part to economic development that we're excited to get working on.
And so Terry, how much was that initial grant from?
So it is $100,000 a year for 5 years. But every year you have to sort of like reapply. So we got our $100,000 for this year. And at the end of the year, then we go through everything we've done, and then they say, okay, we're going to give you the next $100,000. So it's kind of a
Based on performance.
right.
Okay.
So, and one of the key parts to that, and the reason I'm bringing it up quite a bit is the community buy-in and support from all of our stakeholders. And we may identify some areas where we need to change some things to kind of help with the business climate in the county, and that's where some of you might come in. I'm not saying we will, but it is potentially out there. So, I think the Ford Family Foundation with this program is not prescriptive, so they want us to make it our own. They want us to, look at what we have, what we don't have, and how we can best serve the people that are here. So that's why the upfront kind of figuring out what we're doing part is longer. So they said apply for the grant. They didn't give me any criteria. So I applied for the grant, and I sent it in, and they said no. So I revamped it, and they said no. And so then I said, okay, we need to have a meeting. I need to know it. And they said, well, we don't really want to tell you what we want. We just, when you hit on it, we'll know. I was like, okay. 3rd time's the charm. So 3rd time was the charm. I sent it in, and they approved it. So we're
Good
pretty
persevering.
Oh, yeah. It's one of those
When I
things where
look at your budget, Terry, is that in the program and service budget?
no,
Okay, so that came after you submitted, or?
Right.
Okay.
we just got notified not too long ago that we were awarded the grant.
Okay.
So the grant is the idea behind the grant is to pay for what they call a e-navigator, which means nothing to any of us, right? It's a new term, but it's an entrepreneurial navigator. So the idea behind that is that you pay for a person just to go out into the community and talk to entrepreneurs and talk to people, figure out what resources they already have, what resources that we already have that you can connect them to, and what resources are missing. So Maria is going to fill that role. Because I didn't, until we actually figure out what we're doing, I didn't want to just like jump off and hire somebody for that role. So, and then the other part of the money is spent on the pitch contests. I put money in there for marketing, and they severely restricted that. So, it'll be kind of a word of mouth, grassroots, Facebook kind of thing. And then just some travel, $2,500 for travel for that person's going to be roaming around. And then there's a once a year meeting. There's now 5 projects throughout the state of Oregon: Tillamook County, Columbia County, St. Helens, Klamath Falls, Independence, and Grant County.
So we're one of 5 in the state.
One of 5 in the state.
Congratulations.
So they did 3, and then this year they only did 2, which was Columbia County's new like we are.
That's great.
So they're hoping eventually they'll roll it out to the entire state. I guess funding is probably the key there.
So how long have the other counties been doing this? In other words, you don't have to reinvent the wheel totally.
Right, so it's kind of a weird, Klamath was doing it before they got the grant, so they're kind of farther along than anybody else. So they've been doing it for quite a few years, but this is their second year in the grant program. So Independence started and then kind of had some turnover and stuff like that. So they're restarting. And the same with Grant County. I think Grant County, almost all of the elected officials that were in the group, what they call the core team, which is kind of who meets and makes, the decisions of how it's going to go, were not reelected. So they're starting over again as well. Columbia County is starting just the same time as we are. So it's kind of a work in progress, learn as you go. In fact, we had a meeting last week. They don't have metrics yet of what they want to measure as far as outcomes. They're still trying to put that together. So it's kind of a brand new thing.
Maybe Tillamook County will lead the pack. I think it's super exciting when I think about entrepreneurs in Tillamook County. There are a lot of business-minded people here and a lot of makers of things. If you look at the farmers markets, for example, there are a lot of makers of things and people who have a great idea and are starting small. And so I think there's huge potential for this. It's really great.
Right, and we kind of identified, so we have quite a bit of people that move here when they retire, right? So, and that's a pretty large segment of the population. I think it's 30 to 35% of new starts in businesses are started by those people that recently retired. And now they're doing the thing that, they wanted to do and didn't have time to do, or maybe felt like they needed to do something else to, help fund their retirement for whatever reason. So I think we have a pretty high percentage of that population here in Tillamook County. But when you think of entrepreneurs, people think about makers and things, but dentists, doctors, all of those people actually own their own business. So, it's quite a high number. So.
Yeah, before we talked about doing an innovation project where you have kind of an incubator spot for new businesses. Only problem is we don't have any money.
Right. So I think I've been working on the idea, we have that one room in our building, 114, which was set to be a computer lab when the building was first started. I think we're going to set that up with like a printer and some stuff in there where people, if they need to come and meet with somebody or do something like that, they could actually use. And it's not going to be like an incubator, but it'll be maybe something in between, where if they need like a professional space or something to have a meeting, or they need to come in and print something and they don't have access to a printer. A lot of people work off their laptops and stuff, but they don't necessarily always have printers. We saw that a lot during the COVID grant stuff. They needed to print stuff out, but they didn't have a way to print it. So I think that'll be part of this project as well, just at least to get it kind of semi-started. Maybe that will help some, but it won't be like full-blown incubator space. But
So Jerry, can I ask a couple budgetary questions?
Yes, you can.
Just because we didn't get a chance to get that integrated into your budget. I see that you're asking for $148,000 this year, and it looks like we gave you $108,000 last year. But it sounds like you have $100,000 of new money this year that's coming in, and that Maria's time, which I'm guessing is in that $148,000, will actually be covered at least in part by the other funding. Would you? I don't know if Sean, if this is appropriate to ask if we could get an updated budget before we have to make our decisions in May. Just kind of integrating your new funding and digging into if that ask could be smaller, just based on it's a pretty big increase.
right.
Then it sounds like some of that may be covered in other funding you've just received.
So I think, the reason I asked for the increase too wasn't necessarily for payroll reasons. It's just that, in order to get some of these projects off the ground, we have to have some money for marketing and communications. And I've been asked by a couple of people this is just an example, to start a shop local kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been investigating how we would do that, and I found, like the software in order to run that type of program is like $1,600. So those types of things that we have never really been able to afford, getting somebody to write the business spotlights, you know, paying for marketing, paying for some software so we could run a shop local kind of thing that would list all of our local businesses on a map to where you could, you know, people could go to that map and find those businesses. But I agree, I can update the budget, but when you look at our budget as a whole, so, you know, payroll, of course, is the largest number in our budget, personnel services. So if you look at last year's numbers, because I haven't gotten the updated numbers yet as far as how much the insurance is going up and everything. If you look at just salaries alone, that comes up to $177,627. So that's with both of us. So if I move Maria out, that's $45,000 off of there. So that's still $138,000. So I understand what you're saying, but
I was just looking at what was submitted to us, and maybe you have a different document. My
Right.
document shows that your salary and benefits are $186,508, and that you're asking $148,000 from us towards salary and benefits.
right.
So that was where my question came from, because it appeared from the budget sheet
Right.
that
So
we
if I
had,
take
that
her-
that's what you were asking for. So
If I
know,
take,
yeah.
what I'm saying is if I take the 45 off of the 186, I'm still at the 138.
Sure. I would love to see an updated budget that
Okay.
actually has what money you would like and what exactly you would use it for. Just to help us understand again how you're integrating the new pieces into your budget, and then with a $40,000 increase, what additional are we paying for?
Okay.
So it's a little bit vague in this particular one, and with the scrutiny that we are giving to all of our county budgets this year, you can ask the ladies sitting next to you. They've had to explain every penny, and appreciate if we could get just a little more clarity on yours as well. Again,
Sure.
particularly integrating, and I know you didn't have that when you submitted this, but it seems like it could be a bit of a game changer in your budget. So I
Right.
don't know if other budget committee members have asks and that. And I appreciate very much the work plan that you put together.
Yep.
I think that's really helpful for us to understand your new project, what you've talked about, and then kind of the ongoing pieces that you do and how those fit in. So thank you for that.
Yeah, trying to answer that question, what the EDC does, right?
Yeah.
And I kept adding to this because every time I print it out, then I think of something else. So it's kind of good to get it all on paper, so.
And you have talked about new programs that you'd like to start in Tillamook County. If you give us a prioritized list and what you feel the anticipated cost of each one might be. And
Okay.
I don't think we can probably get to all of them that we
Oh,
want
no,
to do
yeah.
next year, but if
Yeah.
we have that prioritized list,
I can always come up
that
with more.
that makes it much easier for us.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I can, like I said, there's always things that we could do if we had the funding to, just like everybody else, like we were talking about earlier. It's
Sure.
but I'll hit the top ones that I think are the most important.
Well, my question is the video lottery has been less than perfectly predictable.
Right.
And so are you, this is really for the treasurer, are you comfortable now with this 200 plus this time?
200 plus, what do you mean?
Isn't that the number? Am I looking at it wrong here?
In video.
Showing
Oh, the-
$215,000 from video lottery.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a really solid number on the conservative side, or?
I think it is. It's, for whatever reason, the last 3 years that we've been in lockdown, it's just gone up.
But what I'm saying is now that lockdown appears to be unlocking, then are people wandering off or going to other options? Or, back when the lottery, was part of what people did during the pandemic, there was a pretty good spike.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if you've heard anything about that changing or going down, or if you're comfortable with the 215, I'm good, but that seems like that's such a volatile number.
I'm good with the 215 for next year.
Okay.
It is unbalanced currently at the moment, and the funds can roll over because they are unpredictable. So in the following year, if 23-24 doesn't show a 215, then bump that down and be able to use funds that are
And there's enough of a beginning balance there to
Cover
make
that,
it
yeah.
through, even if it dropped by $30,000-40,000.
Yes,
Okay.
So does that pay quarterly, or how do they pay that?
yes, quarterly,
So we have one more quarter coming in?
yes.
So, and we're already at 215, so we'll probably be 265 to 270 for the year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have one more payment to EDC and 3 more monthly transfers to DCD.
Right, but those are all within budget.
Yeah.
This is over budget.
Yeah. So currently, right now, it is in a good spot. The funds, can be rolled over to be used when funds don't come in as expected.
Okay, did you want to go through any of these other programs or highlight something?
I can, just got time. So I think mostly here, I was just trying to highlight some of the things that we're working on, but I'd like to talk about, I talked a little bit about the Economic Entrepreneurial Development Fund. Also, we're working on finding technical assistance dollars. It was brought to our attention that possibly businesses, if they're in a tight spot, they need help with accounting or they need help with legal or something like that. So I'm trying to get some technical assistance money to fund kind of a thing where we could grant them some money to, get some help with those things. And then I'm also working on a project with TELC. It was brought to us from Business Oregon as an example. That was, it's Newburgh, where they have developed a child care center, and the EDC there was the lead on the project. So they think the EDC here should be the lead on the project. So I'm working with TELC on developing the new child care center here in Tillamook.
Tillamook Early Learning Center.
Right, Tillamook, sorry. I figured everyone knew what Tillamook Learning. In fact, I have a meeting next week. So I think we're going to go and find out, hear a little bit more from the SEDCOR, which is the Strategic Economic Development that covers Salem, McMinnville, and that area is who led that project. So we're going to go and find out a little bit more from them and what all it entails, but that could be kind of a large project for the EDC to tackle. I'm not sure if it makes sense for the EDC to be the lead on it, but it could possibly be that, the EDC is the collector of all the funds that might come in from different areas, kind of a thing. That might be kind of the management piece of that. I'm not exactly sure.
So
But it-
Tracy, that's a perfect example of a prioritized list.
Mhm.
Brought that to the commissioners, that's gonna be at the top of the list for Tillamook County, because our childcare is almost non-existent in this county.
Possibly so. There's a couple other efforts that are
No,
are
I
in
agree,
the
but-
background getting started. We're going to bring together
Yeah.
groups to do some of the work. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah. Are you guys a 501c3?
No, we're a ORS 190, so we're
Okay.
we're organized similar to a council of governments
Okay.
through an intergovernmental agreement.
Yeah, I
So,
agree.
okay. So it'd be hard to give the tax.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, so that's why I said, I'm not sure it makes sense for the EDC to be the lead on some of these things, but we can definitely be.
Sure. Well, they may have found a way it works in the other counties.
Yeah, we can definitely be the connector and helper, if not, the collector, if not the collector of the funds, we can definitely still be involved in the
Well, I think
project.
that's one of the things I'm trying to say. So if we know what your top priorities are, we can give you our input on it and try
Right.
to figure out a hierarchy of what we might be able to help fund.
Right, so my top priorities for this next year going forward are the Growing Rural Oregon program, and then those miscellaneous projects that you see there.
Mhm.
It's hard to kind of head them, but that's those three things: the Entrepreneurial Development Fund, the funding for technical assistance for businesses, and the child care. So those I would say those are the top. That's what I think we will spend the bulk of our time on.
Yeah.
But I will
Great.
give you a list.
Sure, a list and then a cost for each one, so we
Right.
understand kind of, it can explain to the public, what are we, I'm gonna say purchasing, for lack of a better word, what are we supporting in that particular
Right,
work?
so most of the
It's helpful
cost
to
is
us.
my time, because Maria's been kind of helping me, and she'll be moving off into the other program, so that'll leave just me.
Well, and then it becomes, is that all viable with just you given the other things that are also on your list? So
Yeah.
I think looking at how that all goes together.
So is a little bit of history. The Evo Child Care Center was built by the county through a block grant. So I don't know if you're set up to administer a block grant, if you got one from the federal government, or, because I know Paula Vest said never again after he went through all that.
Yeah,
And the fundraising and original block grant for that were all through CARE. The top off was done at the county.
Yeah.
So just to recognize that as well. And the Tillamook Early Learning Center original building was done through CARE by John Sandusky as well, also a block grant. So there's a bit of history in our own community about how these things have happened. They're probably beneficial for you to have as well. I'd be happy to chat with you
Yeah.
if you want to.
We
kind of
haven't,
know
we're
what's-
not set up to a block grant. We could get set up to a block grant, but I know now, like, the city of Tillamook has done several. So it, like I said, it may not make sense for the EDC to be the lead, but we still want to be, involved and help the project. A lot of times, what I feel like the EDC is kind of a connector, right? We have all these different pieces out there, and it takes someone in the middle to say, okay, we're gonna have this meeting, let's bring everybody together. And a lot of times that's the EDC.
I think there's a definite connection between economic development and childcare, and so I'm glad that you're working on it. I know that we have a lot of people who didn't return to the workforce after COVID because they can't afford childcare, and so there's a definite connection there. And so I will be interested in finding out what you learned from Yamhill County and that program over there, and what their model is, what's working, and then seeing whether or not.
Yeah, I would just love to talk with you about what started. There's a consultant coming on board with a local company to start working on that, so I would hate to see these not being crossed over, so let's chat after.
Yeah, I'm part of
meeting,
the
so I
other
can-
group as well.
Okay,
so-
perfect, thank you. As long as you're in there, I'm good. I just don't want us to be working.
Yeah,
cross purposes.
it's a big piece because our business, that part of, it is a great connection because, the businesses say we can't hire people, and part of the problem is because they can't
Right,
find
and
childcare.
businesses stepped up and said, let us help you. And so I want to, since you're in
Some of
that
that is
group, I'm
that
good.
after hours piece also. Most childcares run, your normal 7 in the morning till 6 or whatever the hours are, and it's like for our people that work in the restaurants and stuff like that, they need the evenings and the weekends. So that's also a consideration.
Well, the Hebo Center, as everybody knows, I think, is part of the Nestucca School District now. and that-
It is now.
So that's changed, and it actually reduced the ability to have some childcare in the vicinity. So, yeah, I think that's important. I have a question. Remember, back when I was on the council, we had the revolving loan fund. Is that still in place?
Right, we have about $340,000 ready to lend out.
So there were a couple of notable, let's call them accounts in arrears at the time. What are your receivables? What's the status of your receivables?
So we only have one that's in arrears right now, and it's just 1 month behind. Everybody else got caught up or paid off. So we had quite a few loans, probably 5 or 6 loans that got paid off during COVID because they got PPP and EIDL money, and they used
Yeah.
that money to pay off their loans.
Good.
And then one of those consistently behind loans that you're talking about finally made it all the way through and made their last payment. It took a lot of hand-holding and working with them throughout the process, but they finally did get paid off. So we're in a really good, I think we have 7 loans right now, and they're all pretty solid. One's 1 month behind, but I think that's mostly the transition between Columbia Bank and the new bank that took over and that kind of a thing. So I think we'll get that worked out and caught up. We did a new loan a couple months ago, and what we found is that if we routinely, every couple of months, send information out to our bankers, when they have people that they can't fund, they send them to us. So we're kind of trying to increase that pipeline. We have one right now that says they're going to apply but haven't sent the application in yet. So it's constantly open, as you know.
Mhm.
And we're going to work to try and get some more of that money out there in the community.
Okay. Without getting too specific, the Beaver Mercantile, is that in your portfolio, or was that paid off?
It got paid off.
That's cleared, that's no longer All right, okay.
That's
Thank you.
great.
Okay, any other questions for Terry? We're about to stay on schedule, we're about out of time. We could talk more about these projects, but I think some of that is, if she'll go forward with some of the recommendations and can just come back to the commission at some point, you can work through those with her.
Great.
And we're comfortable with the video lottery according to the treasurer, so we're good there.
If I make changes, you'll find out in May.
All right, then
Thank
I
you
think
very-
we'll stay on
thank you
schedule,
Thank you so
and
much.
thank you very much. Okay, now, in order to stay on schedule, we'll flip over to the district attorney, and time permitting, we'll still try and get Tassie in and pick up a little time for the afternoon, but I see the district attorney people that come in, so let's go there.
Good morning, I'm Aubrey Olson, District Attorney.
Good morning.
I prepared a PowerPoint, but I do not know, since we have some members that are appearing by video, I brought an extra cable if I could hook into a screen, or if
If
I
you-
need to, I can just.
If you join the BOC link, meeting link, then I can make you a presenter and you can throw it up on the screen.
I would love that. That'd be good. So I thought about printing it, but I knew some people would be on video and they would be able to see it, so that's great.
Okay, so we have your budget request, and I think this committee is reasonably familiar with what you do and the fact that some of your money comes from the state of Oregon. And but I think I will just say for the record, you have a terribly difficult job ahead of you to entertain us like your predecessor did. So. with
I
that
just hope you
said,
didn't
we'll
eat
be
so
ready.
much sugar that you'll fall asleep, get the sugar crash. Because no, I can never, ever entertain quite the way Mr. Porter did.
Nobody, yeah.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
I don't know that I even have the vocabulary to
That's a good thing, actually.
you know, I can do a handstand though, if you'd like some theatrics.
We'll stick with that. Go ahead and explain your staff and your budget or whatever you prepared, and we'll ask questions as you go and go from there.
Sure thing. And really quickly, I'd like to, Sean, where would I get the link? Is it in the email?
It's just, I think I have it. I can send it to you really quick.
While you do that.
Just trying to find who I sent it to last. I can grab it.
I really like PowerPoints. I use them a lot in when I present cases to grand jury. It just really helps to people to see what I'm talking about.
There you go. Just send it to you.
Fantastic. I'm just waiting on it to come in. There it is. All right.
And you should be able to share your screen.
We just be aware that our system's here on the screen, sometimes it takes a little while for what you see on your screen to get up here.
That's okay. And hopefully, it sounded like I got plenty of time, so I hope I won't be rushed. Let's see here. For some reason, I'm not seeing how to share my screen.
Should be upper right hand corner next to the leave button. Should be a little share square.
I don't have that. That's why I can't figure out how to do it.
Yeah, sure. Right there.
Oh, it's next to it. Okay, maybe I'm done.
Every system is different on how you share.
It
so it's
is.
never easy.
When we use a different platform when we record. So,
Sure.
here we go. Here we go. Let's see that.
Should pop up in just a second. We can see that it's trying.
There we go.
Okay, that's a long time. Normally
It is very long
10 or
time.
15 seconds.
I'll go ahead and
Popped up
start.
on mine.
Here
Oh,
we
there it
go.
goes.
So one of the first things you'll notice, and I went off of, I know you have our narratives that we sent out and kind of discusses some of the things. So one of the really big things that I am requesting is some salary increases for our current staff. And I want to give a little bit of history of the last year before I go into this. I don't know who here knows, but a year ago, February, our chief deputy, Ray Basil, passed away from COVID. He left a huge gap, and we promoted Jeremy Dietrich, who was a deputy DA level 2. He was promoted to chief. So Jeremy had about 12 years experience when he filled in as chief. And when we went to the way Bill did things, Mr. Porter, the way he did things is he always liked to replace people at the lowest level. So we promoted Jeremy, and then we filled Jeremy's 12-year DDA 2 position with an entry-level DDA 1, which he actually had about a year and a half experience as an attorney when he got hired as a DDA 1. Then so we finally got that position filled in May. And then so for what that did to our budget at the time, Jeremy, with a lot less experience, came in at a much lower step than we were paying Ray. So his salary ended up being lower. Then we were no longer paying the DDA 2 salary at Jeremy's rate. When we hired a DDA 1, step 1, we went way down. And then in July, I think he had 9 or 10 years seasoned DV prosecutor, Paul Binford, left for another position. And so he was at a high level DDA 2. We attempted to fill his position at a DDA 2 and were unsuccessful. We tried for months. We finally we expanded our search to include an entry level DDA 1. And does everybody understand what I'm saying with DDA 1, DDA 2? Just so everybody understands, we start out, a deputy district attorney 1 is basically out of law school, very little experience. They come in and they handle our low-level misdemeanors, some of the traffic court crimes or violations and things like that. It used to take 5 years to qualify for a deputy district attorney 2. You had to have 5 years or equivalent felony trial experience. I actually convinced Bill to change that down to 3 years last year, so that I could reclassify as a deputy district attorney 2, because I was doing the work of a deputy district attorney 2 at 3 years plus, but was being paid at the low-level deputy DA 1. It's also consistent with how other counties have been doing this. We were the only county that had that long of a time period before you would qualify to be bumped up to the next level. And then that was it. We had those 2 levels. And then there was the chief deputy district attorney, who's next in line to the district attorney. So for me now, it's Jeremy, and if I'm out for any reason, he just steps into my role. And so we were unsuccessful in hiring that seasoned deputy district attorney 2. We expanded to say, okay, we'll take a more entry-level person. And the person, we had a very difficult time even after we expanded that search. We had law students applying who wouldn't have even been eligible, and this was a year ago, not even a year, or 9 months ago. And these people were saying, I'll graduate law school in a year. Can I apply for this job? And I was like, I need somebody now. So we finally got somebody who is he is being admitted, he's going through the process of being admitted fully to the bar. He is a provisionally licensed attorney. So he's not even fully licensed. He's not even from Oregon. So, and he's never had criminal, a lot of people who come into prosecution work after law school, at least clerked or interned in the DA's office, but not this one. He had no experience. So we are really training him from the ground up. So we did finally get him. He started in mid-January. So with that, our level of experience has drastically reduced because Bill retired at the end of December, and then I took over. So experience level has drastically reduced to, and we're paying people a lot less than we were last time we were here. So I wanted that history because I'm asking to increase the salaries of the people I do have. And so I'm going to start with my chief deputy. I do know the county has engaged in a salary study and has compared 12 other counties that are comparable to ours.
So can I
And-
stop for just a second on a
Sure.
point of order? Is this an appropriate conversation for us to be having as the budget committee? I appreciate very much what you're trying to do, but this is all currently being worked through HR, and I don't know if these specifics about particular employees are actually appropriate to the budget committee. It's a question for, I think, you, Sean.
I would not say in detail like this.
Okay.
In general, talking about, yes, I'd like to see about increasing, but not specific.
Why don't you talk about the bigger picture and the source of funding and where it would be, and maybe the differences on a macro scale instead of by name. I would agree with our chair here.
Okay. Sure, and I was just, for what it's worth, just trying to, because this is being requested in the budget for my.
Totally understand that. It just,
Yeah.
it puts
Yeah.
us in a position where we are putting individual people's salaries up on a scale and making a request. And the other thing is, this is in the middle of a current process that's happening
Right.
through HR,
Right.
which is the market study that has been done and is in the process of being finalized. A pay equity study is also being done, which is a legal piece that determines where we can place people in line with others in the organization. So again, it's not going to be up to the budget committee to determine if the steps are allowable or if these folks can be moved from position, this
Okay.
class to that class. So I think that talking overall about your budget and the fact that you're working with HR on these, if you have the money in your budget, how it fits the ask. But I'm very nervous about the one by one as well.
Sure, that's fine. Okay, so, well, regardless of what discussions are had with HR and what's approved down the road, it is somewhat important to go level by level because I only have, I'm allotted for 4 FTE positions. I've only got 3 that are currently filled right now at different levels, and so it's hard not to go person. I didn't put their names, but I mean I only have 1 of each. And
I think
so,
that's where the discomfort comes in. And
Understood.
Jody-
So-
Is Jody with us today?
No,
She's
I don't
not.
see her.
Okay. Sorry,
So-
I just don't want us to step into a place where we get in trouble with.
well, and I definitely
Really?
understand that. And so, but I also will point out that just naturally with step raises as they come throughout a year, we have to factor that into the budget.
Yeah.
So for example, my chief deputy will be eligible for the next step increase in January. And so that is factored into the budget.
Yeah.
And I anticipate him being eligible for his next step increase. Whether it's 2 steps higher will come in later through an HR study. I am requesting it in the budget for all of my deputy DAs, to include my chief. I am asking for requesting that. And so to answer Mr. Olson's question about where does the money come from, well, first it comes from what the history I just described. We have been paying our attorneys since May of last year, or actually you have to go back all the way to February when Jeremy Dietrich took over as chief, because his salary was lower than what we were paying. And then with hiring a DDA1, when we were trying to hire a 10-year DDA2, his salary is far lower than what we were anticipating paying. So we should have a lot more money left over from what we haven't been paying. We've also had, since July 1, we have had a vacancy in our office because Bill left. We finally replaced him with that DDA1, but then Bill left and I stepped up. So technically my position, I had to resign my position as a deputy DA in order to take over as the district attorney. So we have that vacancy that has not been filled yet. And in the budget, I'm actually asking that position to be filled as an assistant chief deputy DA, to be renamed as a deputy DA 3.
Could you compare and contrast the situation in Tillamook County with other neighboring counties? Let's say Yamhill, Clatsop, Lincoln, not Multnomah or not Washington, but comparable counties that have appeared, like the three of us sit as a compensation committee and looked at your salary. Well, you're part of the county provides a stipend, but the bulk of yours comes from the state. We understand that. But rather than do case by case, as Commissioner Scar pointed out, or individual by individual, could you take it up a notch to the macro level and say, you know, we're behind Yamhill County, or we're behind others, or comparable counties, and a recent graduate from law school has a lot of choices, not including Tillamook County because we're too low, or something like that. Is that making sense? Am I kind of...
Absolutely.
Or I think, Doug, the trick is that we're in the middle of the market study, which has all that information, and we just aren't done yet.
Right.
So I think that that's what makes this challenging, and I think every department head sitting here would like to be able to present position by position how far they feel they are behind market. But that is something the county's in the middle of as a project. So I think that's my concern in bringing it to that level at this time.
Yeah.
But
So,
that's
just talk in more general terms then, I guess.
I'm going to, with respect to Commissioner Scar and what we are all going through as far as that, I'm going to try to refrain from talking about any of the market studies and where we're at, even at a macro level, just because all I'm saying is for my budget and my budget request for each position, I'm anticipating step raises that are natural.
Yeah, and that's
you know,
perfect. You have 7 positions, you've had 7 positions, you expect to increase people by steps. We totally get
Exactly,
that.
and so that is, and then what's actually being requested, you know, are a couple steps higher than they may have naturally progressed. Is to accommodate for a hopeful market adjustment. But if you look at my actual spreadsheet, which I'll have it here. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. That's okay.
Put you back in.
It's okay if you guys have the spreadsheet, or I'm happy to pull it up for anybody that may not have it. I'll do it just so that everybody knows that.
You just want your budget spreadsheets up?
Oh, sure. Oh, you're putting them up?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Make sure I got the right ones first. Anything? Something?
I got it.
Came up on my screen.
Okay.
Should be momentarily then in the
Yep.
room. But it's what we have on paper in front of us as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and so if everyone can see, on the spreadsheet titled Aubrey Requested Budget that I have, it's line 176 for total personal services. And our requested budget for 23-24 is actually less than it was for last year. And that is accommodating for those step increases that I've put in there. And they are listed into my narratives.
I don't know why it's not coming up on those two. I love technology.
Thank you, I can see that. I see 982,500 this year, and there was 1.011 million last year. So it's clear the adjustments, and that's looking at 1520 as a department on my first page. I don't know if you have them all combined, but.
Yeah, and if you look at them all combined, taking into account victims' assistance also, it's less than
Yeah.
what.
less than what it was
And I did work with
previously.
Aubrey and Christine on building her requests in.
Yeah.
Okay, so So that's the first thing I was going to talk about was the salary increases that are being requested. And even though it's salary increases, technically by looking at the narrative, the overall salary is actually less than what we've asked for in the past. I'm also asking for a longevity pay of 4% for my office manager. She's non-represented, and I have talked with HR as well as the treasurer about this, and it's my understanding this is one thing that would need to be addressed to go to all departments, because it's just one of those things that a lot of times the benefits that go to union represented employees tend to filter down to the non-represented, but this is not one of those. All the union represented employees got a longevity pay increase, but not the non-reps. And I'm requesting this for my office manager because she is at top step and has been for a long time. So she does not get merit raises. She only gets COLA raises if those come out. And looking at her abilities and she's integral to this office running. I truly believe that without my office manager, she's been there for, I believe, 23 years. She knows the ins and outs. She has historical knowledge, and she gets me through every single day. I ask questions, and she can go back into decades of files and emails. She's the most organized, efficient person I know. Our office would implode without her, and so I think it's important to recognize that, and she's really loyal to this community and this county, and I want to be able to recognize that with that longevity pay.
And I think that's probably going to circle back around to the market study again and the pay equity because I've heard that from, I think, all but 2 department heads this year when we've been going through a meeting with the department heads and the liaisons.
Right. And I've requested it in my budget, but because she doesn't qualify for a step raise, that's why I'm asking for increase for her. And then, let's see, and I'll talk about victims assistance down the way because they have their own special budget. This is just within the DA budget and the law enforcement budget that we have. Training expenses are up from previous years, and that goes back to my discussion I just had related to our less experienced team. This is a couple different things. For attorney staff, because I have a brand new deputy DA, he's going to have to go through the basic prosecutor academy that's hosted by the Oregon District Attorneys Association every year. So every newbie goes through it. I went through it 5 years ago. Our newest deputy DA went through it in October. We got lucky for several years to have strong retention and seasoned prosecutors, that we didn't have to do this every year. But I do have someone to go through that. And so there is the cost of the actual training as well as training or travel, hotel expenses. Also, because of us being a less experienced team and having quite a few new team members, I'm requesting that we all go. I think no registration hasn't opened yet. I know we reserved our rooms, but the Oregon District Attorneys Association, they put on all the trainings that we attend. They do 2 conferences a year. There's a summer conference and a winter conference. They're kind of a big deal. It's important to note that these trainings help us to meet our continuing legal education requirements. So every 3 years, an attorney has to report to the bar. In order to maintain our license, we have to meet certain training criteria. And so we have to do these. We have to do these to keep our jobs. And usually ODAA, I mean, they are cost effective. They're not, the training's not in Hawaii. It's summer conference is in Bend, and we're all like, oh, woohoo, it's not in Salem. Winter conference, honestly, is in Salishan, and because I live in Neskowin, I don't even get hotels. So we actually save the county money because 2 of us don't qualify for lodging. We just go home. So that actually helps us save money. But this year, historically, we've only sent 2 attorneys to summer conference and then 2 to winter conference. But this year, I'm trying to send all 4 of us. I think it's excellent for team building, and especially because not one of us has ever even been to summer conference. It used to always be Bill and his chief, but due to the turnover, nobody's ever been, and we'd all like to go. I even got approval from the courts to let us be out the entire week, which is a big deal. Judge Hill told me not to expect that in future years. So it works. It's actually, I wanted to be able to take my office manager, because I do have an office manager track, but the training is actually occurring during Fair Week this year, and so she's heavily involved in that and unable to go. But that's also part of why the court was able to let us all go, because one courtroom is going to be closed for the whole week. We all know that they don't even set trials during trial week because they know we're not getting jurors. So it's actually the perfect week for us to all four be able to go. And of course, we never know. There's things that happen at the last minute. We do have a lot of things that just kind of unfold day by day. So there's always the potential that I have to stay behind or appear remotely for certain things, and the court's aware of that, and we're working with them. But so that is a reason for additional training expenses this year. There's also, I will point out on that we are fiscally responsible. When it comes to those trainings, we take advantage of as many free trainings. ODAA, ever since COVID, has been hosting the virtual CLE series that we sign up for. It's pretty inexpensive. It's like $200, $210, I think, per attorney for 12 trainings. And each hour of training is on average $65 an hour. So, we do 4 of those, and we've definitely, it's worth it. So we do those to help get our requirements in. So we have that training once a month. And then, like I said, lots of free stuff, and the virtual stuff. The heaviest cost in these trainings is the travel. So when we don't have to travel, we save a lot of money. And then I'm asking for more training. I'm wanting to send my office staff to a lot more training. And a lot of this has to do with our increase in technology usage. A year and a half ago, we transitioned to a digital case management software system. And it has been phenomenal. It's a Prosecutor by Carpel. It allows us to maintain all of our files on a web-based platform, so we can access them from anywhere. It requires the use, which we already were using Word documents and spreadsheets and things like that. We used Adobe Acrobat, but with the Carpel system, we had to get Adobe Pro, which allows us to do more. You can actually edit PDFs, and there's ways that we need to be able to redact documents and do things like that. But our staff, they have knowledge in WordPerfect, which is what we used eons ago. And so I'm wanting to send them, there's a couple of different trainings for like Microsoft Word, for Adobe Pro that I'd like them to use. It will increase their efficiency, which will make their time better and help them to actually use their time a lot better. So it will actually balance out in the end, in my opinion. Let's see.
So I have a couple questions, if I may.
Absolutely.
So your 70/20 insurance and deductibles, attorney liability insurance for Oregon State Bar disciplinary proceedings.
Absolutely.
That has not been in your budget prior. Is this a new requirement from the state?
I like that you got there because that's my next slide.
Oh, how about that?
So actually, it's the next one was about phones, but I did want to talk about that. That is a big deal.
And we understand the phones. Every department's going through that.
Okay.
You don't need to cover the phones.
Bill never wanted us to have phones, but
These are new phones. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
he's like, we can use our personal phones, but when your personal phone could be subject to public disclosure laws, like I don't really want to turn that over. So the insurance. Now, in private practice, attorneys are required to carry professional liability insurance, and the Oregon State Bar has the professional liability fund, and that comes at a cost of $3,300 per attorney per year. We're exempt from that coverage because we work for the government, but that's like malpractice claims and things like that. What we don't have, let me back up. There is some risk management insurance through the county, CIS. I did speak with Joel Stevens, our county counsel. He verified with CIS that there's risk management coverage. It does not cover disciplinary proceedings such as bar complaints. And as far as me, the state does cover, DOJ represents the state in certain cases when people would sue me. So, and a lot of times there's, immunity, prosecutorial immunity and things like that. But the big issue here is bar complaints because there's no protection from the state or the county for bar complaints. And what I found out is we just always thought we were kind of on our own. Bill never covered this, but I've learned as I've become a district attorney that most, if not all, other district attorneys' offices have this insurance for their deputies and themselves. I also know that back in 2015, Bill went through a bar complaint proceeding and he paid over $25,000 out of pocket. And then at the time of Ray's death, he was undergoing a bar complaint proceeding and he was anticipating it costing him over $50,000. And so that is prohibitive to all of us. We've all talked about it, my chief and I especially, and we just don't think, frankly, if I had to hire my own attorney and spend my own money on a bar complaint, I don't know that I'd want to do it. I don't know, it's an extremely stressful process. You want to have an attorney to go through those things, and it's extremely expensive.
So is this coverage through CIS or?
No, it's the quote that we got is through a company that the National District Attorneys Association uses. And it also, the cost that we've budgeted for would include membership to the National District Attorneys Association, which is pretty inexpensive. It's something like, I think, $81 or $91 per attorney. It's a little bit more for the elected. It's under $200 for me, and then it's either $81 or $91 per attorney for each deputy. Not expensive for the cost of the membership. The cost to cover each attorney per year is a fraction of what the cost would be if we had to cover PLF insurance. Most businesses, private businesses, do pay for PLF insurance for their attorneys instead of making them pay for it themselves. And I also know that because the other DA offices cover these costs, that's a benefit that somebody else could get going to another county that we don't have. So that's something I have to think about because recruitment retention is huge. And when I have somebody come to me and say, well, what if I have to foot this bill? And just for what it's worth, if you're curious about what these bar complaints look like, it could be for anything. And as far as I know, there's no statute of limitations on those. So somebody could complain against Jeremy for something he did 10 years ago. And it's a host of things. And sometimes if you read through, it's all public record. You're welcome to research it. I didn't bring any examples, but I can say the example that Bill went through, it was a murder case, and there was an issue over disclosing an email. I think he thought he sent the email, and it when you talk to Bill, he was like, it seemed like a non-issue, and it blew up into this $25,000 plus issue over whether he'd forwarded an email to a defense attorney or not. And he ended up settling with the bar and agreeing, like, okay, I technically violated whatever rule of the bar because I didn't send this email. And so there's a host of things, and people have, they complain on us for everything all the time. Whether it has merit or not, we still have to go forward and defend ourselves. This year's cost, what we have budgeted for this year, is double what it would be for future years. And the reason is I'm asking for proactive insurance, retroactive. And so the cost of retroactive insurance is the cost of 1 year of insurance, and it goes back. So the way bar complaints work is if somebody wants to complain against one of the deputy DAs, they would rope in the district attorney as the supervising attorney. And what I'm a little fuzzy on, because I haven't had to go through this process yet, but if somebody were to complain against Jeremy for the thing 10 years ago, they could rope me in on it, and he'd have to pay for that. Somebody could make a bar complaint on something I did in the last 4 years. They might make a complaint against something Paul Binford did, who's my former DV prosecutor 8 years ago, and they might rope me in on it now. And so that retroactive insurance, that one-time cost, would go back to anything in those last several years that could tack on to us. And so considering it was just a one-time cost and it covers us all the way back, I felt like that was a pretty good expense. Well worth it, in my opinion.
Ask a question. Are you receiving more general complaints now than in years past? Like so many people in public service, everybody's mad about everything.
Well, and it's hard to say because I don't always know when someone did complain to the bar on me, but it didn't turn into a fully fledged complaint. They were mad that we asked for a warrant for their arrest, and they complained that we shouldn't have asked for. They lost their job because we got a warrant for their arrest, and then ultimately they were like, they had every reason to ask for a warrant for your arrest. So official complaints, I don't see a lot of those, but just generalized complaints, it comes from all directions all the time. So, but I don't know if it's more than it has been in the past, because people just tend to hate us.
Those feel bad.
We don't do it right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which way
No, I know.
I do it.
Everybody's
It's
mad.
not right.
Everybody's mad right
Everybody's mad.
At everybody.
At everybody, yeah. So they're not picking on you.
Does this distinguish us from any other Oregon counties, or are we catching up to what's already in practice elsewhere?
It's catching up to what people are doing already.
Okay.
So I'll
And
go-
that's probably a recruiting perk, if you will, maybe that's not the right term, but if you could assure the prospective colleague that this is in place, that would help.
Absolutely.
So one other question I have, so your prosecution expenses have tripled.
Yes.
So can you go over that very quickly?
Our homicide rate has tripled.
Wow.
Which sounds incredible, but when we went from 1 every 12 to 18 months to 3, that results in tripling. And this is very much related to the murders that we've had in Tillamook County.
Okay.
And it's a long process, and it's hard to determine exactly when these things will go to trial. We've also had not just the murders, but we've had more fatal crash cases that are criminal cases. Everyone hears about the fatal crash cases that we have in our county, but they're not all criminal cases. In the few years that I've worked here, I saw maybe 1 or 2 as actual criminal cases, and then all of a sudden, in a span of like 2 months, I had 4 of them that were criminal cases. And so one of them, I've managed to resolve a couple of those so they won't go to trial. But I have one that's still set for trial. If it goes to trial, we bring in, I have to bring in the medical examiner, I have to bring in, there's often out-of-state witnesses. But the murder cases are really the ones that run up the bill. And so I have, for this next year, I have one trial scheduled. It's a murder trial that happened back in 2021 out at Sand Lake. Every single witness, we have out-of-county law enforcement that came over, but every single civilian witness is from out of state. And so we have to pay for their lodging. Now so we set 3 weeks of trial, and I don't lodge every single person for 3 weeks. I break it down as like, this person, you're here for this day, and that person, it's that day. It's like you Tuesday, you Wednesday. And if there's people that it's like, ooh, I can get you in and out on the same day, I'm not paying for your hotel. I do really try to make that clear. But believe it or not, people aren't excited to come back to Tillamook. They want to come on vacation. They don't really want to come back 2 years later to talk about the horrific event they witnessed. But that's where that comes in. And then one of the big expenses, not just the witness expenses, if we have to, we will fly people back for those types of trials. There's a lot of cases where we have out-of-state witnesses, and honestly, we just don't prosecute those cases sometimes. When we have this balancing act all the time of, can we pay to fly this person back from wherever? They were visiting from Montana, and now we've got a trial, and it never fails. You have an incident that happens in the summer when people are actually visiting here. The trial is in the winter. Nobody wants to come here in the winter from Montana. So, we do weigh that out, and there's some times when we just dismiss cases because it's like we just simply can't afford, the benefit is not worth it to us. So it's not worth the cost. But these cases are. But then one of the biggest expenses to us is a psychological evaluation. And just the way it works with the law is that, and I didn't, my Sand Lake case, I did not think we were going to go this route. And then I found out at our last hearing that, oh, by the way, we're getting a psychiatrist to look at this person and we're going to have this defense. And just the way the law works, that when a defense attorney has a psychological evaluation done, then the state has a right to have their own done. And we do, because we want that second opinion. We want our own expert. And those tend to run, $3,000 to $4,000 a pop. So that is where that money comes in. So it's one of those things that's like, I owe it to the public to make sure that these are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and that's just the cost of it.
That explanation.
Tricky to budget for future murders.
Well, these are the cases that we have pending.
Yeah, so we know.
So, but I don't know when they'll get set up. I have one currently set for trial. I have two that are in the pipe, and I don't know if or when they'll get set for trial. But like these evaluations would occur in the next budget cycle, or anticipated to. If we don't need them, then great, we saved money. But if we need them and didn't ask for the money, then where are we going to get it?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're working with in our budget cycle is contingency. Because what we've discovered is that you all put contingency into your budgets, which is, a smart thing to do, but we also have been setting aside contingency in the general fund from the overall, the treasurer's office. And so we've kind of, in some cases, been doubling our contingency. So Sean may reach out to you and say, hey, this isn't going to be in your line item, but I have it for you. We just don't want to double list it, because by double listing it, we have, and the need for us to have a balanced budget, we've been shorting ourselves, because each department has contingency plus general fund has contingency. So there'll be some conversation potentially between now and the final budget to say, how certain are you? And if you're not certain, it may be put into the general contingency, but the general contingency is going to be available as needed. It's not going to be something that would ever be held back when you needed it for, a murder trial. It just, right now we've got it in two places, so we're
That makes sense.
overstated.
Well, and our budget is for, these are the cases that we absolutely know about right now. It's hard to predict if something's going to go to trial, but when we have these, it's like, oh, it's definitely going to, we're definitely going to need this evaluation. It's just, is it in this budget cycle, or will it stretch all the way out to next?
Correct, and that's, I think, one where it's just recognizing the county is working all together as all departments with the
Right.
treasurer's office to list one batch of
That makes sense.
contingency. Because not everybody ends up using it every year, and so then we end up with, again, this overstatement in our budget, and that can be really detrimental, because it might mean we say no to raises, or no to a new staff person, no to something that's really needed, because we can't balance the budget with both double stated contingency and needed expenses. So it's one of the things we're digging into this year to say, how certain are you? And if you're really not that certain, that's okay. Let's put it in the general contingency instead, so we can single state and make sure that we're not cutting things that are really needed in order to get to that balanced budget that Sean has to have by law to get us where we're going. So,
That makes sense.
yeah, so thank you. We've been using that opportunity to tell people as we're looking through their budget.
That's great, because it is very difficult. I cannot predict
Totally.
what crimes are going to happen in our county.
Exactly. No, we keep asking everyone to bring their crystal ball to these hearings, but nobody seems to have one that's very clear. So
Right.
we totally get it.
So don't
We
be
always,
surprised.
for years, would ask your predecessor, what large cases do you have pending that might require expert witnesses and travel and so on? And I can recall a few from, 4, 5, 6 years ago, some big ones that were into six figures, actually, because of travel and bringing in psychiatrists and who knows who else. And so you've really covered that there are at least a couple rolling forward that may require your office to bring in some paid consultants.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that you really don't have an option.
Cost of doing business.
Not if I want to do my job and actually represent the state effectively to, promote public safety in our county.
So
Thank you.
here's, did you have a question?
No.
Oh,
Thank you.
So this is a sort of, well, it's related, but it's not actually part of the budget. We all hear a lot about the lack of funding for public defenders. how has that affected what goes on here? And I guess it would bleed through if people have to be held or trials delayed or something because they don't have a public defender. What's the situation here in our community?
In our county, it's the opposite. We have a fully staffed, well, it's a public defense consortium. We have 3 private attorneys who are on the consortium, and then they have contracted attorneys so that when there's a conflict for one of them. But we have not had the problems they've had in other counties. And I actually got a list on that just today from the Washington County District Attorney. We're one of only 12 counties that aren't having a problem. And when I say it's the opposite, it's because I'm short-staffed and I'm struggling to keep up with all the work that we're getting. So as opposed to, we're not having to hold off or worry about cases being dismissed because of a defense shortage. We're worried about not getting cases reviewed in time because we don't have the time. I don't have the staff that can get through all of it in a timely manner.
Thank you for bringing up that insurance, going back one topic. I'm horrified that we didn't have that before. So I'm really glad that you put that in your budget and that you put it in your budget retroactive.
Thank you. I know it's time up, but I did have more on, if you wanted me to continue going through victims assistance budget. I don't know if I'll just kind of open the floor for questions if you guys wanted to get to that, because I don't want to run over.
Significant changes in the budget?
The only significant change at this point is that, last year, we have a new full-time person. So victims assistance historically was 1 full-time coordinator and 3 part-time people. But in the past, we had gotten approval to hire to replace 2 full-time workers with 2 part-time workers with a full-timer. So we realized years ago that having part-time employees didn't work. We need people to look at files every day. We have to turn around and get notices out, and we have constitutional rights we have to meet. And so we finally got that full-time employee who started in June of last year. And when she came in, and then with her coming up to speed, I made some changes to effectively assign each full-time person to 2 attorneys, 2 or 3 attorneys. We only have 4 right now, so each one's assigned to 2 attorneys. And it drastically changed the way they operate and handle their stuff. And so they're able to operate much more efficiently. And it resulted in a drastic reduction in the need for a part-time employee. And so we actually laid off our part-time employee because we just did not have enough work for that person when they came in. So the budget has changed from, we were at, I think, 2.48 FTE, and now we're down to 2. And so that kind of frees up some of the grant funding that was allocated to the part-time employee that can actually offset some of the county costs to go back into our victims program and some of the expenses of our other full-time employee.
Great.
Do you know if the state has a bill before the legislature that would adjust the money that for your salary that comes from the state? And I think it's roughly 70% or something like that, maybe a little more. Do you know, are they looking at that as part of what's happening over in Salem, or do you know?
I do know. There is a bill that they are looking at. They're trying to get, and I don't know where it stands for the victims assistance part of it, but they're working, a big push is to make sure there's funding so that there is 1 full-time victims assistance advocate to every 2 attorneys. So we've actually been able to do that with the way we've shifted our full-time, part-time, and with our grant funding. But as far as the district attorneys, yes, there is a huge push and that bill is still on the table. The last conversation I heard was that it was a dying bill, but I know they're still fighting for it. I know it was going to go to Ways and Means, but they are wanting the state to, the way it works is there's a 2-tier system that's not actually in statute. It was adopted by DAS to pay attorneys, and it's based on population. And the big argument is that population size does not matter for the work that we do. In fact, the more rural counties, the district attorneys do a lot more than the district attorneys do in the more populated counties. I can definitely vouch for that. I have a very full caseload. I'm a full-time prosecutor and now a full-time administrator, so I pretty much work every single day. But they are trying to do that to eliminate the 2 tiers so that, as part of it goes with the Pay Equity Act, so they're trying to make sure that all of the district attorneys are paid equitably. I don't know if it'll survive, I don't think it will, but.
So what's the pleasure of our committee? Do you want to hear a little more information, or are we comfortable at this point on, with everything that we've seen and heard? What's your pleasure?
I'm comfortable.
I'm comfortable. I did have one question though. How's the mental health court doing? I almost got kneecapped by Bill Porter when I brought it up the first time. So I'm just curious.
It's going really well. I really think that it is extremely time consuming.
That's what I've heard.
It is very time consuming. However, I think that it is serving its purpose for a few people. Not everybody makes it, but there have been a handful of people that have been very successful. We've had a couple of repeat students, but for those few people, it has seemed to really help. The cost benefit analysis, there are people that will tell you that if it helps one person, then it's worth it. I haven't been participating in it long enough to know, to really be able to say that. I'll just say it helps some people.
Okay.
I have regular meetings with Judge Hill, and I bet Aubrey does also, and he feels really great about it. He said he thinks that it's a good thing that we're doing.
So maybe we need to find some additional funding to fund that.
We
Yeah, I don't know.
submitted the specialty court grants.
Okay,
Not-
for the
For the
state.
behavioral health court,
Okay.
so we just submitted our intent to submit, I believe it was. It wasn't
Okay.
the full grant yet, but we did that yesterday. So they're still working with that. Additionally, there's a family court that will be getting started also on a specialty grant under Judge Trevino. So we are working our way forward to deal with some of those difficult issues that you were interested in.
Wow, we are really moving forward from when I first came on as a commissioner. Congratulations.
So I'll just end off here with saying that don't be surprised if Sean reaches out to you. These additional expenses that are in contingency in both budgets, so he may be reaching out to you to
Okay,
have a conversation.
sounds
Yeah.
good.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so we have no intention of taking it away. We have an
Great.
intention of listing it once.
Yeah.
That makes
So we can give
perfect
you other
sense.
things that you want and need.
Yeah.
My only fear, and I'll just for what it's worth, for the record, my only fear with that is that I really need this money because I'm prosecuting a murder, and you guys tell me, "Oh, sorry, such and such department got that money."
That won't happen.
That's not gonna happen. No, that's not gonna happen.
So, okay.
That's not gonna happen.
Perfect.
Okay, well then, I think we've covered the DA, and thank you so much. It's good information, and I know there's been a change at the top, meaning you, and for my part on all of this, I'm pretty comfortable that Tillamook County is well represented and that we're gonna be okay. You know, not knowing what's around the corner, but do what you can do, and if something goes wrong, come see these three people. They're on the same page.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
so
you,
much.
Aubrey.
Thank you, Aubrey.
Okay, with that, Tassie, we're not gonna get you in before lunch, but maybe, we will get you in today. How about that?
Around 2 o'clock, I think.
So with that, we will recess until about 12:30.